desire is important because desire is what propels you to actually sit down and listen to yourself. Listen to, not to the madness in your head, but listen to something deeper down, to come out of the noise, the constant noise that is this frenetic mind producing thought and conversation, entertaining itself continuously and robbing us of actual full engagement with the present moment. You need desire to want to come out of that, because the moment you sit down to undo such a thing, such a structure that's very pervasive, you'll be met with resistance. And you've all felt that when you first either did the InnerSense program or came to a retreat. You would have found resistance at some point come up in that process. That's entirely natural, because you are confronting neurological patterns that you have become very familiar with. And neurological patterns that are familiar to you produce chemistry that is familiar to you, and you become connected and addicted to that chemistry. And so your mind seeks out that chemistry repeatedly by engaging the same neurological patterns in relation to your environment. If you stop and look at those patterns and the expression of those patterns, they are challenged, they're disrupted. You're saying, instead of just meeting this and feeding it the same energy or the same chemistry that I've been feeding it until now, I'm going to stop and observe it. That is like going kind of cold turkey on it. And when you do that, that pattern cannot reinforce itself as distinctly and as sharply as it has done up until now. That is met with resistance, because the mind is being used to that pattern expressing itself, will now emphasize the need to express that. And so if you are doing something that is disrupting that process, the mind will tend to pull you away from whatever is disrupting it and say, no, come over here, go this way, leave that stuff alone, that's too disruptive. We want something that is easier and more familiar. So building momentum is what you initially do when you establish a practice that confronts that familiar, repetitive structure of mind. As you build momentum, you start to see change, and you might see it in small aspects of your life, or you might, as some of you have, see it in major aspects of your life, where it affects every part of your life in to varying degrees. But that momentum at some point begins to fade. It's a bit like sitting and initially being very alert, very conscious, intent on paying attention to what's happening in the mind and in the body, and then surreptitiously drifting off, or nodding off, or losing your awareness of being upright and open, and the posture collapses, and you don't know what is doing that. So too with the momentum that you've created with regular practice, that can very easily fade. And people will tell me that they even know how long it takes for it to fade. They do something like today, and then they say, within a few weeks, within a month, within 2 months, it fades, and I find I lose my equilibrium again. And I forget what it is that was so important to me before, because I get distracted by my day-to-day tasks and day-to-day responsibilities. And my life simply ticks over one day to the next. In other words, you are simply following flow of mind. Mostly when people say they're just going with the flow, they're really referring to the flow of mind, which is the flow of yesterday, of memory and of repetitive cycles, and the re-establishment of those repetitive cycles. So to change the cycles, you have to disrupt that flow, which simply means you have to show up. You can be sitting here today and listening to me talk about this work, and you can be partially attentive to what's being said and to the interactions that we're having, or the questions that arise. So you're here in form, and you could say to somebody, I was at that thing on Monday, but how completely are you here is determined by the quality, the degree of attention that you give to being in this room, and participating in, with your consciousness, participating in what is happening here. Would you agree? That varies. It can be partly on your phone, thinking of what you're doing tonight, etc., etc. All of that will impact not only on what you derive from this session, but what you experience as your life. If you find yourself in your life saying, at the moment I'm doing this, but soon I'm going to be doing something else that's more amazing than this. And once I get to that, then everything is going to change, because then my relationship is going to be better, and my health is going to be better, and I'm going to have more time to meditate, more time to do inner practice, to do all of these things. And it's coming. It's just around the corner, probably about another 6 months or maybe a year at most. Okay, but it's somewhere in the future. If you see that show up in your life, you're already in that field of flow of mind that is saying tomorrow is going to be better than today. You just have to wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to bring something better than today, and therefore you're going to feel more at ease, more fulfilled, more joy, etc. tomorrow or some time in the future. And if you do that, you rob yourself of the very source of joy or the source of fulfillment, which is in your current experience. It can only ever be in your current experience. And if you haven't considered that before, then consider it now as you're sitting there. And if you've heard it before, really deeply consider joy, your sense of fulfillment as a human being, your sense of purpose. And I'm not talking about an intellectual purpose, a genuine deep sense of purposeful life, an engagement with life. Perhaps you have had a glimpse of what love is when you're fully present. Maybe you've even had that on a drug. You've taken a drug, and somehow the world opens up for you, and you see things very clearly. You see, wow, there's this interconnectedness between all things and people, and you're fascinated by this, of course, and then the drug wears off and the consciousness fades, and you're looking for that again. It doesn't matter how you've seen it, but you will have seen it only ever in the moment.